Have you ever wondered what it's like to bring worship into a prison yard or manage a national tour? Today, we get to sit down with Tucker Fleischmann to talk about the wild, sacred spaces where ministry and music collide. You don't want to miss this one. Kingdom Builder starts right now.
Hi, my name is Lachlan.
Hi, my name's Brooklyn, and we're from Southland.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is John Wesley.
Hey, Josh Bissell here.
Hey, this is Jamie McDonald.
What's up? I'm Laverdier.
Hey, it's Leah.
And Brandon with Presence Music Band.
What's up, y'all? This is Seth Schleter.
This is Anya Lee.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Bodie, and you're tuned in to Kingdom Builder.
Hey friends, welcome to Kingdom Builder. I'm Mike Laxton, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to someone whose fingerprints are all over some of the most powerful worship and ministry movements happening right now. From leading worship at local churches to helping bring worship into prison yards, Tucker Fleischmann is one of those guys who's not just in the industry, he's in the trenches living out the gospel. Thanks again, Tucker, for joining us on Kingdom Builder today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we had a chance to meet up at an event in Tampa a few weeks back. Yeah, you were doing some managing for Bodie on the road, and would love to get into that a little bit. But before we kind of dive into what you do day to day, can you tell us a little bit about who is Tucker outside of the bios, the links, and how would you answer that?
Yeah, who is Tucker? Gosh, I feel like that's been the theme of my adult life. Tucker is. Man, my heart ultimately, I think amidst all sorts of different things I do, there's sort of this umbrella, which is a tie and a heartbeat to worship music, and it's a tie and a heartbeat to the local church. I'm a pastor's kid. So I think my dedication in church was about 3 or 6 months into my dad's first lead pastor role. So literally since infancy, I've just kind of been involved in and around the local church, and that's kind of what has tied me to a lot of the work I'm doing now. And so whether it's prison ministry or music industry or worship leading, it all kind of has tied roots back to what God's doing locally around the country. So I feel super blessed to kind of get to play these different roles in different areas today.
Now, was there any one particular moment in your life where you felt pulled into doing the ministry full time?
Yeah, what I'm doing now is newer for me. It comes after just under about a decade of full-time ministry. So I think I started serving in a worship sort of volunteer capacity early in high school. And right towards the end of college, I took my first worship leading position. It was kind of an interim transitional role. And, that continued up until about 2023 when I made the transition. So full-time ministry is a part of my past, and I intentionally remain involved at different levels to this day. Yeah.
Now, I know one of the newer parts of what you do is that you've as you told me before when we talked at the Bodie concert, is that you're tour managing, but it's kind of a newer role for you. We want to get into a little bit more details of that, but what kind of surprised you most about stepping into that role of managing a national tour?
What surprised me? I think what surprised me most was probably how much I enjoyed it. That sounds so bad. But, so for the first 2 years that I worked with the Harmony Group, I was interfacing primarily with our churches, which was very natural to me coming from a full-time ministry background. So stepping into the artist management side was kind of new. And I was, you sort of go from working with ministries, working with groups, to working with people, like individuals and personalities. And I wasn't sure how I'd feel about that. And so going from working with artists in a studio or in my home office to I'm going to be in person with 7 people, 24 hours a day for 3 weeks straight. There's a little bit of is there going to be me time? Is there going to be devotional time? I'm about to sacrifice kind of all these comforts of just working remote. And gosh, I just loved it. I loved every second of it. It was tough, being away from family. You lost a lot of routine, but gosh. The artist that I got to work with, which was Bodie, and the team that we had on the road with us they were so incredible. Their hearts are incredible. They were inspiring to me, personally watching them do what they do day in and day out. But just the friendship and sort of family that we built over those 3 weeks. Maybe I expected it, but that's never guaranteed. There's a chemistry, there's a relational aspect to it of what happens when you put 8 people who've never spent time together in a van for 3, what happens? And so I was pleasantly surprised with, gosh, we just clicked, and it was an incredible month together.
Well, I mean, it seemed from just the limited time I got to spend with you and your team, a few weeks ago, I think it definitely seemed like, you really was enjoying what you were doing and just the dynamic. And personally, that's something I would love to do one day. I think that would be a lot of
Yeah,
fun. But of
yeah,
course, I got a family and kids, so it's kind of hard. It's hard to separate yourself. And I know that even Bodhi said himself, it's like, he's got a family and kids. It's
yeah,
hard just to do that.
yeah.
But kind of take us, if you can, just for again, trying to do like an industry insider here.
Sure.
Can you take us maybe like what does a day in the life of a tour manager look when it was managing for Bodhi? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
Well, I would say my role is unique in that I kind of had three jobs. I was tour managing. I was managing playback, so I built the show for Bodhi and for Gracie Binion, who was opening for Bodhi, and then I was also managing our tour sponsor. And so I was kind of always in and out of different roles. But as far as the tour management goes, and for the record, for the background, I didn't go to music school specifically to I want to get into the music industry. I went to business school, I went to seminary, I jumped right into full-time ministry. And so as far as my experience and how I approach it, this isn't out of some playbook. So if you do have experience and you're listening to this, it may differ from that. But as far as my approach to tour managing holistically, I would say my goal, similar to how I work with churches, is how can I prepare and manage in a way that takes all of the peripheral stress off of the artist? How can I do my job in a way that lets them perform at their highest level? And that just means they're not worried about details. They're not worried about when am I going to get food? Am I going to have a place to sleep? Am I going to have conversations? How could I set Bodhi up in a way that lets him walk into the venue and lets him have personal time with God or in preparation, so that when he ultimately gets to perform and even, as you saw, lead worship for these different groups of people, that he is just rested and focused and doesn't feel like he had to carry all this additional weight. So that holistically, I would say that's the goal. How can I make it feel like he doesn't have to do anything but what he's there to do, right? And so as far as how I approach that, I would say tour managing for me is very front loaded as far as effort goes, right? And so it's logistics and it's travel and it's routing and it's hotels and it's communicating with venues and even outside sort of media, PR, like yourself, making sure that local ministries and agencies can get in and be a part of it. And so that's not very specific, but I would say it's pretty front loaded as far as effort goes, of we don't want to be caught in a scenario that's going to be a distraction or is going to put stress on the artist in a way that's going to take away from what they're there to do, if that makes sense. So
No, yeah, absolutely. Let them do their art, and then you handle everything else basically, and let them perform.
That's the goal.
So what do you think would be that one thing that some people would overlook, that they might misunderstand or overlook as a tour manager, that again, maybe something that people don't realize that, oh wow, that's something you actually do? What would you, maybe if you could pick one thing?
Again, I don't know how other people do it, but I think that one thing that I didn't anticipate that has been helpful and very fruitful in what we've done so far is really the relational side of it, honestly. As far as me, we talked about the chemistry of touring, but even the reality of, tour managing or managing in general can seem like a very, very business relationship, right? I'm doing a job, you're doing a job. And I would say the relational investment side has been so valuable. And I say that because as we have different dates on this tour and as there sort of ebbs and flows of the travel or the shows or whatever, because of the time that I feel like mutually Bodhi and I have invested in each other's relationship, I just have a much better sense of what his needs are at any given day. Right. And so I know what's going on in his family, and I know where his mental health is at. And I know where kind of things that he's processing peripherally that could impact his just state of mind on any given day. Right. And so one example I have, which isn't necessarily relational, but it's similar as far as the proactive planning side of things goes. When we had our Knoxville date, we got a heads up that there would be a tornado warning in effect that would go into effect in the middle of our show. And so I'm running playback, I'm tour managing, I'm doing all these things. And I know there was some stress like being held, by Bodie and Gracie specifically. And so we're getting towards the end of the show. We're in the last half hour of the show. And I'm like walking outside, like I'm running playback, but I'm walking outside, like looking at the weather. And I just knew like he was stressed about it. Are we going to have to cancel the show? Like, I want to make sure we get time with the fans and all these different things. And so I just knew the last thing he's going to want to do is worry about loadout. He's going to worry about, are we going to make it to our hotel in time? Like, depending on the weather. And normally we go to eat right after shows. Like, we get to a hotel, are we going to be eating Snickers bars and Dasani, out of the hotel lobby? And so it was that where it's like in the middle of the show, I'm sending, Domino's to the hotel. I'm talking to the venue in the middle of the show of like what we need as far as loadout. And so that when that show ended, it was our fastest loadout. He had to do nothing but go talk to fans for the limited time that we had. And by the time we got to the hotel through the worst rain we've ever driven it, like it was scary. There was like food waiting for us. Right. And so that's so minor. But as far as he's thinking about performing and the safety of the team and time with fans and all that, like if I can just lift that load off of him, I just knew it was going to make the rest of the show and everybody else's life a little easier for the rest of that date. So
it sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stress there, but sometimes, when you start doing what you love, regardless of the stress, that you're gonna do well because it adds to that. And of course, you're helping the artists from the back end of things, be able to perform their music, which is going to touch lives. And like you said, Bodie puts an amazing worship. So when Bodie and Gracie did the worship set, I'm like, this is amazing. This was awesome. And just, I just like his whole philosophy of being in the bars, because you're going to get people who might not go to a normal church venue. They're going to go to the bar though, and they're going to see, and just his heart behind that. So I think that's from the person who got to watch the show, I think that just to let you guys know that it was an amazing experience, and I thought it was really well done, and I'm glad that it sounds like it was a good experience for you too. So applaud you on that and that, and really, like I said, really enjoyed that. You've worked with other churches, of course. Now you were in artist management, but you also work with churches like SU Worship, Red Rocks Worship, and then what kind of big differences do you see between that? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit briefly, but as far as like working with the church as opposed to the solo artists,
I have found a pretty big difference between the two. I mean, there's a lot of shared similarities, no doubt, as far as, writing and music creation and how we approach releasing music and stuff. But the difference, I think, largely is sort of group dynamics versus relational and individual interpersonal dynamics, and I think churches can have a harder time. I think the mission and the purpose is shared by churches in the sense of like, we're all walking in the same Great Commission, right? And we, for a large part, we have a lot of shared sort of like missional objectives and strategies and ways we approach ministry, even in the music space. One of the biggest differences could be application, right? I think there are some limitations on like churches, and not in a bad sense, but limitations for application, meaning when I'm writing as a ministry, one of my clearest applications, oftentimes, not all the times, is corporate engagement, right? I'm not just writing a song. Maybe God has given me a word and I'm trying to put that into song, but the whole time I'm also thinking about how is this going to encourage a congregation to respond, right? How is this going to be received by a huge group of people? Not necessarily just a writer in a writer's room pouring my heart out onto a paper, but I'm trying to do it in a way that's going to encourage a church to sing with me, right? And so that's one of the biggest differences I've seen, and that's a consideration that a church has that an artist might not always have. I think the other big difference with churches is just the width that ministry operates at, right? Music is sort of one lane, maybe a dozen, right? And so the way that we approach music, even for the Harmony group, is that we really treat songs as missionaries for churches. And so in their approach to songs, we're really trying to write music, or the teams that we work with are really trying to write music where these songs can act as missionaries. Yes, they have a Sunday morning application, but these songs go far beyond that. They go with you into the car, when it's just you and God and you're in a really tough moment. It might go with you into a hospital room. It might go with you, into your kids' rooms or into your kitchen. Like, these songs are traveling with you so that you're not only encouraged to sort of exhort and worship and respond to God when you're together with other people, but that these songs would go where and be an encouragement with you 24/7. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, but that is one lane of, gosh, especially having come from a full-time ministry background, like, gosh, I'm leading worship and I'm writing music, but I got a youth event tomorrow. Like, we have a community outreach on Thursday. And so I think churches, with all the different hats that we wear, it can be that much harder for them to really lean in and sink their teeth into the music thing, just because of how many plates they're spinning. And so that's I wouldn't say that's a disadvantage. That's the beauty of what ministry is. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to music, it can be harder for ministries when they're just trying to balance the breadth of all that their ministries are doing locally. And so that's not a priority thing for us. I think that's exactly what we try to do, is we try to create lift for them, because those are important things. Music shouldn't just be the only focus. And so I think that's always been our heart and our focus with these different ministry teams. Like, how can we create lift? Not so that you have to choose between being a pastor and being a songwriter, but that you can do both well. And we can just kind of come behind and support what you're already trying to do.
No, absolutely. You're definitely, you're that reinforcement for them, really just trying to help them, to do their job well. And again, I guess in a way, it's almost like the solo artist too. You're letting them be able to create and do what they do best while you handle the other stuff. So, you wear a lot of hats. Of course, the artist, manager, tour manager, you do the stuff with the churches, but there's also something that you and I kind of sort of have in common. You're involved with a group called God Behind Bars, and I actually recently got my feet wet with Bill Glass Ministries with Behind the Walls, which they're both prison ministries. The one I had my first event about a month or so ago. So kind of coming off that experience, I want to ask you, what was your first time like serving behind prison walls, and how did that change you?
Well, if you've done any prison ministry, they're all different. They all have left their own thumbprint on me. My first prison experience was actually just outside of it's northern Arizona, Kingman, Arizona. This is before I was officially involved with God Behind Bars. This is when I was still in full-time ministry. But it completely changed how I experience worship. I mean, to this day, like it was one of the most jarring, right? You're carrying in preconceptions of like, what is prison like? Like, I've heard all sorts of stories. Like, is this going to be safe? Like, that's just a real consideration. People ask me all the time, like, do you feel safe in there? And how are they going to respond to what we're doing? Is this something they always get to do? And this is just normal? Are we going to be received well? Are we going to be rejected? Like, you kind of have all these things you carry in. And so as far as what impacted me that first time, I think what was most obvious was, oh my gosh, like, this is what worship should feel like. Like, this is like, that was my first thing. Like, and I've been in full-time ministry, but the coolest thing about worship in prison, because that's kind of the lane I focus in. There's all sorts of different ministry happening in there, but the coolest thing about worship specifically in prison is that there is no masks. All of the temptations of a Sunday morning, which is whether that could be like, I got to put on my best outfit or my best face, the stressors parents carry of like, I got to get my kids, like, it's just a miracle if I make it to worship because I just got to get my kids there. Like, or the temptation to feel like you have it all together. I mean, these inmates, they have internet access, for the record, if you don't know, like, they can all look up why each of them are in there. Like, imagine going to a Sunday morning and your laundry list of sin was publicly available to everyone sitting around you. And so because of that, although that is probably terrifying to the civilian, the outcome of that is there is no false sense of need for grace. Right. It is ultimate vulnerability. Like, they are so in tune with their need for Jesus, with their need for grace. And they are not going to waste any opportunity to corporately worship him. And so that was just a game changer for me. Like, oh my gosh, this is what vulnerable, pour my heart out, my sins are on display. God, I need you. That like I've never seen, you know? And so that was just one. And every experience I've learned different things, but I don't know if that was your experience, but that is so evident every time when I walk in where I go, gosh, I wish I worship like this every single day of my life.
So my experience with Bill Glass, it's more evangelism, more of just, sharing the gospel and trying to see, to convert either, to bring inmates to Christ or to equip them with tools to do that. So what was the greatest part of it when I did that was really just seeing how welcome, number one, they're welcome, like just very welcoming, and they're just happy that you're there, because a lot of these inmates, they don't get to see anybody. They don't get visitors. They're just, this is someone who we're taking time out of our own day to come out and just talk to you, whether it's, about life, pray with you. Like I remember just, having a list of a dozen or so inmates I spoke with, just prayed over them and just like, hey, this is, we're gonna, you're in this spot, but yeah, and you're a believer, but so now let's equip you, let's get you the tools you need to help, spread the gospel. And thankfully it was definitely a surreal experience. Of course, going in, you kind of had that hesitation. I wasn't too, I've heard a lot of people they were kind of afraid of the barbed wire. I wasn't really a big deal with that for me. It's like, it looks more like a school nowadays. You go into the prison, but just, I mean, it was just, everybody was very welcoming. I mean, just it was such a awesome experience. And then at the end, when you're realizing that we've got these few dozen volunteers that are helping out, and realize that hey, these lives are changed, and now that they don't have to worry about what's happening in prison, but now they have that they can realize that if no one else loves them, Jesus loves them, and they've got that thing to rest on. So I think that really, it really just, it changed me a lot too. It really got me passionate about that. So when I saw that's what you did, is, you did that on the worship side, I was like, that's just so cool just to see that and see the videos that you've posted on your Instagram. And I was like, you know what, that's something that for anyone who's watching and listening, check out, God Behind Bars. I think that'd be an awesome space to look into. And I really, personally highly recommend, getting involved in some sort of it, because as you and I both know, that's, historically people in prisons are forgotten. And there's some of the most, the people who, some people who may need grace the most, because they need to, they don't get to hear it a lot. So I think it's really important for that. So, with all the events you do, between the prison ministry to the management and things like that, how do you personally prepare yourself, either mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, for these events? Is there a specific prayer or scripture that kind of guides you along the way?
Well, I think very practically, I mentioned it earlier when I said that I've intentionally stayed involved in the local church, even though, so I live in Portland, Oregon. The Harmony Group, the company that I work for, Stephen Brewster, that's in Nashville. We're touring all around the country. I knew very early on, because of the mission of what we do, which is tied to local ministry, I knew pretty early on that it would be easy working remote and traveling a lot for the actual activity of ministry to falsely replace what is still a responsibility by me to follow Jesus. You know what I mean? I think that's a temptation people in ministry can face, and I have faced and failed at, which is the actual doing of ministry. Oh, that's my walk with Jesus. And I just knew early on, I need to remain rooted in serving, giving my time, not getting paid for it, giving my time to local ministry, to staying rooted in a local community. And so no matter where I go and what I have, 3 to 5 guys who I've been in community with for the better part of, 3 years locally, but almost 10 years, between different places that I've lived, that are kind of on speed dial. And no matter where I'm at in the country, we're talking regularly and we're praying regularly, and certainly when I'm in town. So I'd say practically, for doing something like this, it can be very easily to get uprooted, and ministry and relationship with Jesus just becomes this thing that I do. It's a job that I have, and it's not rooted anywhere, because it's, especially in the day of remote and travel and all this stuff. So practically that's what I've done. And that would be my encouragement, is don't let your job, and this is delving into identity work that I've done, but what I do can never define me. Some of the most unstable moments of my life, or moments where I felt like I was distant from Jesus, or when I let my job, when I let my activity define who I was. So very practically, I would say no matter what I'm doing, I'm always serving and I'm always staying planted in local church and local community. And then as far as like my individual prep time, it's personal devotion and it is personal worship. I think that's a big temptation for worship leaders and for people who do ministry, is like, worship is what I do when I'm on a stage in front of people, And so even for like our team, for Bodie's team, we had a handful of moments where it was just time in the green room before the show. Like, hey, can we just pray? And can we just pull out an acoustic guitar and worship? Like, can we go first? Is leading restricted to what I'm doing for other people and their experience? Or is it something that we believe in enough that if there was no audience, we're still going to choose to worship and still going to, so as far as preparation goes, it's making sure that, gosh, if I stopped all of this tomorrow, would I still believe that worship music is powerful? And would I still believe that a personal relationship and walk with Jesus is worth doing? And for the answer for me has been yes. So as far as scripture goes, I've been reading, this does not sound novel, but I always start with Psalm 100 in preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So much so I put it on my arm. It is, and basically this, I got this from a friend, which just has helped me so much. But Psalm 100, the way one translation puts it, it talks about that worship and thanksgiving are essentially, the language this translation uses, it's the password to the courts of God, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and this has just been so instrumental in what I do. When I'm at my lowest, when I'm at my most discouraged, when I feel the most like my work or what I'm doing is mundane, or it's, when I'm feeling worn out or not in the mood, there is a quick pathway to the presence of Jesus, and it's a posture of thanksgiving and it's a posture of praise. And so I think even broadly for whoever might be listening, no matter your circumstance, if you're getting ready to go into work, if you're struggling, parenting, whatever it is, it's part of why worship music and is so powerful. It's because if I can just intentionally, I'm just going to worship Jesus right now, and I'm going to be thankful for my circumstance, whatever that is. That is step one. That is the key to entering the gates of Jesus, entering the courts of God. So that's been super core for me for the last year.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I have one more question just to kind of wrap things up a little bit. What do you hope that the people take away from your story, whether they're creatives, worship leaders, or just believers trying to find out where they fit? What would you tell them?
A defining decision-making path that I'd say has defined the last 7-8 years of my life is really just a practice of discipline and intentionally trying to avoid analysis paralysis. Like, I am a planner. It's why I love tour managing. Like, I love logistics. I love proactivity. I love trying to solve problems before you face them. And the pitfall of that can be that I won't move until I'm confident in where that path is gonna take me. Right. And that is sort of the antithesis to what is a walk with Jesus, right? Like, God's word being a lamp unto my feet, that's not a headlight. That's just enough light to take one more step. And so I would just say that don't get caught in analysis paralysis. Like, don't wait until the spreadsheets make it make sense, the pathway makes it make sense, because that is the antithesis of faith without sight, right? And so I would just say move. Like, if God's presenting an opportunity, pray about it, spend time with it, and then trust that He's going to guide you along the way, and just have faith that light enough for one more step is going to be enough. I'm doing some prison ministry, there's some tour management, there's worship leading, there's all these, a lot of it feels unstable and it's spinning plates. And the reality is it's just been a testament that I've grown in confidence the more that I've leaned into God and just trusted that one step at a time is going to be enough. That the more that you do that, the more willing you will be to do that when God starts to ask you to go into unlikely places. Like, hey, this prison ministry thing, that was fun that one time. Could you do this regularly? Even though you don't know what that looks like your faith just grows as you continue to trust God. So my advice would be just take the step, whatever that looks like.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Tucker. For sharing your heart, your journey, just really how God's moving through worship, and then of course the touring and your prison ministry efforts. Definitely appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again soon here on Kingdom Builder.
So grateful for you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you like, comment down below, and share this with your family and friends. And if you want to learn more about Tucker and his work, hit the links in the description. And until next time, this is Mike Laxton reminding you to keep Christ first in your lives, and everything else will fall into place.